Hyunwoo stood at the window of the shuttle, watching the massive alien ship grow larger with each passing second. He had been a commander in the Earth Defense Force for 10 years, but nothing prepared him for this moment. The Varathian flagship was bigger than any city he had ever seen. It stretched across the darkness of space like a metal mountain, glowing with strange purple lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Behind him, Jiwon checked her equipment for the 5th time. She was the best engineer Earth had, though she was only 28 years old. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her tools. Next to her sat Dae-hyun, a pilot who had flown more missions than anyone else in the fleet. He looked calm, but Hyunwoo noticed how tightly he gripped the armrest. Hana, their technical specialist, was drawing something in her notebook. She always drew when she was nervous. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. The door opened with a hiss and cold air rushed in. Hyunwoo took a deep breath and stepped forward. The others followed him into a hallway that seemed to go on forever. The walls were made of some dark metal that reflected their faces like mirrors. Strange symbols glowed along the ceiling, lighting their way. 2 Varathian guards waited at the end of the hall. They were tall, much taller than any human. Their skin was gray and covered in what looked like natural armor. 4 arms hung at their sides, each one holding a weapon that hummed with energy. Their eyes were black and showed no emotion as they watched the humans approach. One guard spoke in a deep voice that seemed to vibrate through the floor. A small device on Hyunwoo's collar translated the words into Korean. The guard said they would take the humans to General Krethax. The group followed the guards through corridor after corridor. They passed rooms full of equipment that Hyunwoo could not even begin to understand. They saw other aliens moving about, all of them busy with tasks that looked important. Finally, they entered a huge chamber. The ceiling was so high that Hyunwoo could barely see it. The room was empty except for a platform in the center. On that platform stood something that made everyone stop and stare. It was a machine, but it looked almost alive. It stood on 2 legs like a person, but it was 12 meters tall. Its body was covered in armor that gleamed like silver. Weapons were attached to its arms and shoulders. A single eye glowed red in the center of its head. General Krethax stepped out from behind the machine. He was even bigger than the guards, with 6 arms instead of 4. Scars covered his armor, each one telling a story of battle. He looked at the humans the way a teacher might look at small children. His voice boomed through the chamber when he spoke. He told them this was the Sentinel X9, the finest war machine ever created by the Varathian Empire. It had taken 300 years to perfect. The weapons could destroy a city in minutes. The shields could stop any attack. The power source would run for 1,000 years without stopping. This machine had won battles on 50 different worlds. Krethax walked around the machine as he talked. He touched it with something like pride. He explained that the Varathian Empire had 300 star systems under their control. They had been at war for most of their history. They knew how to build weapons better than anyone in the galaxy. The Sentinel X9 was proof of this. It was the perfect killing machine. The general stopped and looked directly at Hyunwoo. He said that humanity was new to space. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. They were like babies learning to walk. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of enemies. The Varathians had decided to help humanity survive. They would give Earth the plans for the Sentinel X9. They would teach humans how to build it, but there was a price. Earth would join the Varathian Empire as a protected world. Humans would fight alongside the Varathians when needed. They would share their resources. It was a good deal, Krethax said. Without the Empire's protection, humanity would not last 10 years in space. Hyunwoo listened carefully. He had been briefed on this offer before leaving Earth. The world government had already decided to accept. They had no choice, really. Humanity was weak compared to the other races in the galaxy. They needed allies. They needed weapons. The Sentinel X9 was both. Krethax activated the machine. It came to life with a sound like thunder. The eye blazed brighter. The weapons powered up, crackling with energy. The machine took one step forward and the entire platform shook. Then another step. It moved smoothly, like a dancer despite its size. The general made it raise one arm and a beam of pure white light shot out, hitting a target at the far end of the chamber. The target exploded into dust. The general turned off the machine and faced the humans again. He asked if they understood what they were seeing. This was power. This was survival. This was the only way humanity could exist in a galaxy at war. He wanted to see fear in their eyes. He wanted to see respect. Instead, Ji-won stepped forward. She walked right up to the machine, tilting her head to look up at it. She reached out and touched one of its legs. Then she smiled, a big bright smile that seemed out of place in that serious moment. She turned to the others and said it was amazing. She said it was beautiful. She said the design was elegant. Dae-hyun joined her, walking around the machine. He commented on how well it balanced. He wondered how fast it could run. He asked if they could add thrusters for flight. Hana was already sketching in her notebook, drawing the machine from different angles. Krethax watched them with confusion. These humans were not acting the way he expected. They showed no fear. They looked at the Sentinel X9 like it was a toy, not a weapon. They touched it with curiosity, not caution. The general had shown this machine to leaders from a dozen different races. All of them had been afraid. All of them had understood the power they were seeing, but these humans seemed almost happy. Hyunwoo thanked the general for the generous gift. He said Earth accepted the alliance. He said they would put the Sentinel X9 to good use. Then he asked a question that made Krethax's eyes narrow. Hyunwoo wanted to know if the machine came in other colors. The silver was nice, he said, but maybe something less scary would be better. The general did not know how to respond to that. Color? Why would color matter? This was a weapon of war. It was meant to be scary. That was the point. He told Hyunwoo that the color was not important. What mattered was the power. Hyunwoo nodded, but he was already talking with his team. They were discussing modifications. They were talking about improvements. They were excited in a way that made no sense to the Vorathian general. Krethax dismissed them, sending them back to their shuttle with all the technical data they needed. As he watched them leave, he felt something he had not felt in many years. Doubt. These humans were strange. They did not think like warriors. He wondered if giving them the Sentinel X9 had been a mistake. The shuttle ride back to Earth took 3 days. Hyunwoo spent most of that time reading through the technical data that the Vorathians had given them. The information filled hundreds of files. There were blueprints, power specifications, weapons systems, and manufacturing instructions. Everything needed to build a Sentinel X9 was there. It was overwhelming. Ji-won sat in the back of the shuttle with her computer, going through the data even faster than Hyunwoo. Her eyes were bright with excitement. Every few minutes she would gasp and call someone over to show them something interesting. The power core used technology that Earth had only theorized about. The shield generators worked on principles that human scientists thought were impossible. The weapons were centuries ahead of anything in the human arsenal. Dae-hyun was less interested in how it worked and more interested in how it moved. He watched the videos of the Sentinel X9 in action over and over. He studied every step, every turn, every movement. He made notes about balance and speed. He wondered out loud how it would feel to pilot something so large. He had flown fighters and dropships, but never anything like this. Hana filled 3 notebooks with sketches. She drew the Sentinel X9 from every angle. She drew close-ups of the weapons and the joints. She drew diagrams of how the parts fit together. But she also drew other things. She drew the machine with a smile on its face. She drew it with flowers growing around it. She drew it wearing a hat. When Hyunwoo asked her why, she just shrugged and said it helped her think. When they landed at the main Earth Defense Force base, a crowd was waiting. Scientists, engineers, military leaders, and government officials all wanted to see the data. They wanted to know about the Sentinel X9. They wanted to know about the Vorathians. Hyunwoo spent hours in meetings, answering questions and explaining everything they had seen. The world government approved the alliance immediately. They ordered the construction of 100 Sentinel X9 units to start as soon as possible. Factories were repurposed. Resources were redirected. Earth's entire industrial complex focused on this single project. It was the biggest construction effort in human history. Ji-won was put in charge of the engineering team. She had 5,000 people working under her. They built the first Sentinel X9 in 6 weeks. It stood in the middle of the factory floor, exactly like the one they had seen on the Vorathian ship. 12 meters tall, covered in silver armor, weapons on every surface. The eye glowed red. It looked dangerous. It looked powerful. The first test was scheduled for the following week. Military leaders from around the world came to watch. News cameras were everywhere. This was a big moment for humanity. They were no longer the weakest race in space. They had a real weapon now. They could defend themselves. But 2 days before the test, Ji-won came to Hyunwoo with a request. She wanted to make some changes to the design. Nothing major, she said. Just a few improvements. Hyunwoo asked what kind of improvements. Ji-won smiled and said it would be better to show him. The next morning, Hyunwoo walked into the factory and stopped in his tracks. The Sentinel X9 was no longer silver. It was bright blue. Not just any blue, but a cheerful sky blue that seemed to glow under the factory lights. The weapons were still there, but they had been painted white. The single red eye had been replaced with 2 large eyes that looked friendly and curious. Someone had even added what looked like a smile to the faceplate. Ji-won stood next to the machine looking proud. She explained that she had run some tests. The original design was effective, but it could be better. The color change reduced heat signatures. The new eye design provided better depth perception. The modified faceplate improved airflow. All the changes were practical. They made the machine work better. But Hyunwoo knew that was not the real reason. Ji-won had made the machine look friendly because that was what humans did. They made things cute. They made things approachable. Even weapons of war. He asked her if this was really a good idea. What would the Varathians think? What would the other alien races think? Ji-won's smile faded a little. She said she did not care what aliens thought. This was a human machine now. Humans would use it the way humans wanted to use it. Besides, she added, the modifications actually did improve performance. The test results proved it. The machine moved faster. It used less power. It was more stable. Making it look friendly was just a bonus. The test went ahead as scheduled. Dae-hyun climbed into the cockpit, which was located in the chest of the machine. He strapped in and powered up the systems. The machine came to life with a deep hum. Dae-hyun took a step, then another. He made the Sentinel X9 walk in a circle. Then he made it run. Then he made it jump. The machine moved like it was alive, responding to his thoughts almost instantly. The weapons test came next. Targets were set up at different distances. Dae-hyun fired the plasma cannon's bullseye. He activated the molecular disintegration field. The target vanished. He tested the shields against high-powered missiles. They held easily. Everything worked perfectly. The machine was exactly as powerful as the Varathians had promised. But something else happened during the test. The crowd of observers started cheering. Not the serious, respectful applause that usually followed military demonstrations. Real cheering like at a sports game. Children who had come with their parents were jumping up and down with excitement. People were taking pictures. Someone started a chant. The blue Sentinel X9 walked back to the starting position, and people clapped like it had just scored a goal. Hyunwoo watched all this and felt something shift in his understanding. The Varathians had given humanity a weapon meant to inspire fear. But humans had changed it into something that inspired joy, and somehow that made it more powerful, not less. A weapon that people loved would be used with more care. Pilots would train harder. Engineers would work longer hours. Everyone would do their best because they wanted to, not because they had to. After the test, Dae-hyun climbed out of the cockpit with a huge grin on his face. He said piloting the Sentinel X9 was the most amazing experience of his life. It was not scary at all. It felt natural, like the machine was an extension of his own body. He patted the leg of the machine affectionately. He said he wanted to name it. Maybe something like Big Blue or Sky Dancer. The military leaders were less enthusiastic. They complained about the color. They said it made the machine look like a toy. They said enemies would not take it seriously. They demanded that all future units be painted in proper military colors. Dark gray or black or camouflage green. Anything but bright blue. But Ji-won had already started production on the next units, and she had let the other engineers make their own design choices. The second Sentinel X9 was painted bright red with yellow stripes. The third was pink with white polka dots. The fourth was covered in a pattern that looked like fish scales. Each one was different. Each one had its own personality. Hyunwoo knew he should stop it. He knew he should enforce standard military regulations. But he could not bring himself to do it. The engineers were so happy. The pilots were so excited. Everyone involved in the project worked with a passion he had never seen before. They were not building weapons. They were building something they cared about, something they were proud of. Within 2 months, Earth had 50 Sentinel X9 units operational. Each one was unique. Each one had a name. Each one was loved by its pilot and maintenance crew. They were scattered across Earth, standing guard at major cities. Children played in their shadows. Artists painted murals on nearby buildings celebrating them. They became symbols of hope and protection. And then the Varathians sent a message. General Krithax was coming to Earth. He wanted to see how humanity was progressing with the Sentinel X9 program. He wanted to inspect the machines and the pilots. He would arrive in 1 week. Hyunwoo read the message and felt his stomach drop. He knew the general would not approve of what humans had done. He knew there would be consequences. He just hoped those consequences would not cost Earth the alliance they needed to survive. General Krithax's ship entered Earth's orbit exactly on schedule. Hyunwoo waited at the landing site with a team of officials. He had spent the last week trying to prepare for this visit. He had considered painting the Sentinel X9 units back to silver. He had thought about hiding the more colorful ones. But in the end, he decided to show the general everything. Hiding the truth would only make things worse later. The Varathian shuttle landed in a park in the middle of the city. People had gathered to watch. Children waved flags. News drones hovered overhead. The shuttle door opened, and Krithax stepped out, followed by a group of his officers. The general looked around with his dark eyes, taking in the scene. His expression was unreadable. Hyunwoo greeted him formally and offered to show him the Sentinel X9 units. Krithax agreed, and they walked through the park. The first machine came into view, standing near a fountain. It was the bright blue one, the first modified unit. A group of children were playing near its feet. Parents sat on benches nearby, completely relaxed. Some people were even having a picnic in the machine's shadow. Krithax stopped walking. He stared at the blue Sentinel X9 for a long moment. Then he turned to Hyunwoo and asked what had happened to it. His voice was very quiet, which somehow made it more intimidating. Hyunwoo explained about the modifications. He mentioned the improved performance. He talked about better heat management and enhanced sensor arrays. He tried to focus on the technical improvements, but Krithax cut him off. The general pointed at the children playing near the machine. He asked why civilians were so close to a weapon of war. He asked why there were no security barriers. He asked why the machine was painted like a toy. His officers stood behind him, all of them looking confused and slightly angry. Hyunwoo tried to explain.
He said that humans had a different relationship with their machines.
They liked to make things personal. They liked to make things friendly. It did not mean they took the machines any less seriously. The pilots trained hard. The machines were maintained perfectly. They were ready for combat at any moment. Krithax did not look convinced. He demanded to see more units. They took him to a military base where 10 Sentinel X9 machines were stationed. The general's expression grew darker with each one they showed him. There was a red one with racing stripes, a green one with leaf patterns, a yellow one covered in smiley faces, a purple one that sparkled in the sunlight. Each machine was different, each one decorated in ways that no Varathian warrior would ever approve. One of the Varathian officers could not contain himself any longer. He spoke in their language, forgetting that the humans had translators. He said that giving humans the Sentinel X9 had been a terrible mistake. He said humans were children playing with adult tools. He said they had turned a symbol of power into a joke. They had taken the Empire's greatest achievement and made it ridiculous. Krithax silenced the officer with a gesture, but Hyunwoo could see that the general agreed with everything that had been said. The situation was getting worse. Hyunwoo needed to do something to save the alliance. He suggested a demonstration. Let the pilots show what the modified Sentinel X9 units could do. Let them prove that the machines were still effective weapons despite their appearance. The general agreed, but only because he wanted proof that his gift had been wasted. A combat course was set up. Targets were placed. Obstacles were arranged. 5 pilots were chosen, including Daehyun. They would put their Sentinel X9 units through a series of tests while the Varathians watched. Daehyun climbed into his machine, the bright blue one he had named Sky Dancer. The other pilots entered their own machines. The 5 Sentinel X9 units lined up at the starting position. They looked like a rainbow of metal giants. Daehyun could feel the weight of the moment. This was not just a test of the machines. This was a test of humanity's worth in the eyes of the Varathian Empire. The course began. The Sentinel X9 units moved as one, running forward with surprising speed. They jumped over barriers 3 times their height. They dodged between obstacles with precision. They moved like dancers, like athletes, each motion flowing into the next. Daehyun felt completely connected to his machine. Every thought became action instantly. The weapons test came next. Targets appeared at random intervals. The pilots had to identify and destroy them while continuing to move through the course. Daehyun's fingers moved across the controls. Plasma bolts shot out, hitting every target perfectly. Around him, the other pilots did the same. Not a single shot missed. Not a single target survived. Then came the advanced combat simulation. Drones were released to act as enemy fighters. The Sentinel X-9 units had to work together to eliminate all threats while protecting a central position. This was the hardest part of the test. It required coordination, strategy, and split-second decision-making. Daehyun's team moved like they had practiced together for years, even though some of them had only met that morning. They communicated constantly, calling out positions and threats. They covered each other's weak points. They used the environment to their advantage. And through it all, their machines responded perfectly to every command. The bright colors that had seemed so foolish now made it easy to identify teammates in the chaos of battle. The test ended. All targets destroyed. All drones eliminated. The defensive position never breached. The 5 Sentinel X-9 units stood in formation, their weapons still glowing from use. Daehyun was breathing hard, his heart pounding. But he felt good. They had done well. They had proven themselves. Krethax watched the results being displayed on a screen. The numbers showed perfect scores in every category. The time to complete the course was faster than any recorded Varathian attempt. The accuracy was 100%. The efficiency was beyond expectations. By every measurable standard, the human pilots had exceeded the performance benchmarks. But the general still looked unhappy. He told Hyunwoo that yes, the machines worked well. Yes, the pilots were skilled. But that did not excuse what humans had done. They had changed the Sentinel X-9 in ways that showed disrespect for Varathian culture. They had made it look weak. They had stripped away its ability to intimidate enemies. What good was a weapon if no one feared it? Hyunwoo took a deep breath. He had been thinking about this question since they first received the Sentinel X-9. He told the general that humans had a different philosophy about weapons. They did not believe in making enemies afraid. They believed in being so strong that fear did not matter. The appearance of the machine was irrelevant. What mattered was what it could do. More than that, Hyunwoo continued, making the machines friendly changed how humans treated them. Pilots bonded with their Sentinel X-9 units. They took care of them. They trained harder because they genuinely cared about their machines. The bright colors and friendly faces created emotional connections that made the pilots better warriors, not worse. Krethax shook his head. He said that Hyunwoo did not understand war. He did not understand the galaxy. Out there, beyond Earth's small corner of space, there were races that respected only power. Showing any weakness was an invitation to be destroyed. Making weapons look cute was the ultimate weakness. It would get humanity killed. The general said he would be watching Earth closely. If the modified Sentinel X-9 units proved to be a liability in real combat, the alliance would be reconsidered. Humanity would have to prove that their strange approach to warfare actually worked. Until then, Krethax reserved judgment. As the Varathians prepared to leave, Jiwon approached Daehyun. She had watched the entire demonstration. She asked him how it felt pushing Skydancer to its limits. Daehyun smiled and said it felt like flying. It felt like the machine understood him. He would not change a single thing about it, not even to please the Varathians. Jiwon nodded. She felt the same way. Whatever happened next, they had stayed true to themselves. That had to count for something. 6 months passed. Earth continued building Sentinel X-9 units. The number grew from 50 to 100 to 500. Each machine was unique. Each had its own colors and personality. Pilots from every nation trained with them. The machines became a normal part of life. Children grew up seeing them in parks and plazas. They were guardians, protectors, and somehow also friends. Then the warning came. A fleet of ships had entered human space without permission. They belonged to the Kryn Empire, a race known for their aggression and military strength. The Kryn had been expanding their territory for decades. They had conquered 12 different civilizations. Now they had decided that Earth would be next. The Kryn sent a message. They demanded Earth's immediate surrender. They wanted all resources, all technology, and all Sentinel X-9 units transferred to Kryn control. They gave humanity 24 hours to comply. If Earth refused, the Kryn would attack with overwhelming force. Their message included footage of battles they had won, cities burning, ships exploding, populations enslaved. They wanted humans to be afraid. Hyunwoo called an emergency meeting. Military leaders, government officials, and senior pilots gathered in the command center. The mood was tense. Earth had the Sentinel X-9 units, but the Kryn fleet was massive. 200 warships against 500 mechs. The numbers seemed bad. Many people argued for contacting the Varathians and asking for help, but the Varathian fleet was weeks away. They would never arrive in time. Daehyun spoke up. He said that Earth should fight. The Sentinel X-9 units were ready. The pilots were trained. They could defend their home. Running to the Varathians for help would prove Krethak's right. It would show that humanity could not survive on its own. This was their chance to prove otherwise. Jiwon agreed. She had been studying the Kryn ships. They were powerful but predictable. They relied on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. They expected their enemies to break and run. But what if Earth did not run? What if they fought back in ways the Kryn did not expect? The modified Sentinel X-9 units had capabilities that no one had tested in real combat yet. This was the time to find out what they could really do. The decision was made. Earth would not surrender. They would fight. Every available Sentinel X-9 unit was mobilized. Pilots rushed to their machines. Defense positions were established around major population centers and orbital platforms. The colorful mechs stood ready, their weapons charged, their pilots determined. The Kryn fleet arrived exactly when they said they would. 200 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in formation. They were dark and menacing, covered in weapons and armor. They moved with military precision. Their commander opened a communication channel. He wanted to see if Earth had made the smart choice and decided to surrender. Hyunwoo responded. He told the Kryn commander that Earth rejected their demands. Humanity would defend itself. The Kryn commander laughed. He said that humans were foolish. He had seen the reports about their modified Sentinel X-9 units, painted like toys, decorated like children's playthings. He said that Earth's military was a joke. This battle would be over quickly. The Kryn ships moved into attack position. They targeted Earth's orbital defenses first. Energy beams and missiles flew through space. But before they could reach their targets, the Sentinel X-9 units launched. 500 colorful mechs shot up from Earth's surface, their thrusters burning bright. They spread out in a defensive formation that looked almost like a flower blooming. Daehyun was in the first wave. Skydancer moved through space with grace that seemed impossible for something so large. He targeted a Kryn cruiser and fired. The plasma cannons hit perfectly. The cruiser's shields flickered. Around him, other pilots did the same. The space between Earth and the Kryn fleet filled with weapons fire and explosions. But something strange happened. The Kryn soldiers hesitated. They had been ready to fight a serious military force. Instead, they saw machines that looked like carnival attractions. Bright pink mechs, cheerful yellow mechs, mechs with smiley faces and decorative patterns. The Kryn had studied warfare their entire lives. They had fought countless battles, but they had never fought anything like this. That moment of hesitation cost them. The Sentinel X-9 units pressed their advantage. They moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic. Pilots Minsu and So-hee worked together, their machines dancing around a Kryn destroyer. They took turns firing, never giving the enemy a chance to respond. The destroyer's weapons fell silent. Its engines failed. It began to drift. The Kryn commander tried to rally his forces. He ordered his ships to ignore the appearance of the enemy machines and focus on destroying them. But the psychological damage was already done. Kryn warriors were trained to face fearsome opponents. They thrived on matching strength against strength. Fighting cute, friendly-looking machines that moved like dancers broke something in their mindset. More than that, the human pilots were not fighting with rage or fear. They communicated constantly, often joking with each other even in the middle of combat. Daehyun congratulated another pilot on a good shot. Someone else commented on how pretty the explosions looked against Earth's atmosphere. They treated the battle almost like a game, not because they did not take it seriously, but because they had absolute confidence in their abilities. A group of Kryn fighters tried to break through the defensive line and attack Earth directly. Pilot Taehyun intercepted them with his bright orange Sentinel X-9 that he called Sunrise. He moved between the fighters so fast they could barely track him. His weapons fired in perfect rhythm. One fighter exploded, then another, then three more. Tae-hyun spun his mech in a complete circle, firing in all directions. The remaining fighters scattered. The battle lasted 3 hours. By the end, 50 Kryn ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest were damaged. Not a single Sentinel X-9 unit had been lost. A few were damaged, but their pilots had managed to retreat for repairs. The Kryn commander could not believe what had happened. His superior force had been completely outmatched. But worse than the military defeat was the psychological impact. Kryn warriors defined themselves by their strength and fierceness. They had been beaten by opponents who looked like toys and acted like they were having fun. The shame was overwhelming. Some Kryn soldiers refused to continue fighting. Others questioned their commanders. The unity of the fleet began to break down. On the second day, the Kryn commander requested a meeting with Hyunwoo. They met on a neutral space station. The Kryn commander looked tired. He said that his empire had never faced an opponent like humanity. They did not fight like anyone else. They did not think like anyone else. Their weapons looked harmless but fought with perfect efficiency. His warriors did not know how to handle it. Hyunwoo asked if the Kryn were ready to withdraw. The commander said yes. They would leave human space and never return. But he had a question. Why did humans make their weapons look so strange? Why did they paint them with bright colors and give them friendly faces? Did they not understand that war was serious? Hyunwoo smiled. He said that humans understood war very well. Maybe too well. They knew that fear and anger made warriors reckless. They knew that taking everything too seriously led to mistakes. By making their weapons friendly and approaching combat with confidence instead of aggression, humans stayed calm. They made better decisions. They fought more effectively. More than that, Hyunwoo explained, the appearance of the Sentinel X-9 units affected enemies in unexpected ways. It created doubt. It caused hesitation. It broke the mental preparation that warriors relied on. The Kryn had been ready to fight monsters. Instead, they faced something that confused them. That confusion gave humanity an advantage that no weapon system could provide. The Kryn commander left without another word. His fleet departed human space within hours. Back on Earth, celebrations began. They had won. They had defended themselves without help from the Varathians. The colorful Sentinel X-9 units landed in cities around the world to cheering crowds. Children ran to touch them. Adults took pictures. The machines that had saved humanity were welcomed home as heroes. Dae-hyun climbed out of Skydancer and found himself surrounded by reporters. They asked how it felt to win such an important battle. He said it felt good, but he gave credit to his machine. Skydancer had responded to every command perfectly. The modifications that Ji-won and her team had made worked exactly as intended. The bright blue paint job had not stopped them from winning. If anything, it had helped. News of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Kryn Empire, known for their military might, had been defeated by a race that had barely entered space. Even more shocking were the reports about how humanity had won. Colorful mechs that looked like toys. Pilots who joked during combat. Weapons decorated with smiley faces. Other civilizations did not know what to make of it. The Varathian Empire received the news with mixed feelings. On one hand, the Sentinel X-9 units had proven their worth in battle. The technology they had given humanity had worked exactly as designed. On the other hand, the way humans used those machines went against everything Varathian military doctrine taught. General Krethex decided he needed to see Earth again. He needed to understand what had really happened. Krethex arrived 3 weeks after the battle. This time his attitude was different. He was not there to inspect or judge. He was there to learn. Hyunwoo met him at the landing site. The general looked around at the city, seeing the Sentinel X-9 units standing guard as always. Children still played near them. People still treated them like friendly giants. Nothing had changed despite the recent war. They walked through the streets together. Krethex asked questions. He wanted to know about the battle tactics. He wanted to understand how the pilots trained. He wanted to see the damage reports and repair logs. Hyunwoo provided everything. He had nothing to hide. The victory had been real. The modified Sentinel X-9 units had exceeded all expectations. They visited the pilot's training facility. Dae-hyun was there, running practice drills with new recruits. His bright blue Skydancer moved through an obstacle course while he explained proper techniques. The general watched for a long time. He noticed how relaxed the pilot was, how natural his movements seemed. The connection between Dae-hyun and his machine was obvious. They moved as one. After the demonstration, Krithak spoke with Dae-hyun directly. He asked the pilot about fear. Did he not feel afraid during combat? The Kryn were known for their brutality. They had destroyed entire civilizations. Yet Dae-hyun had fought them with what looked like joy. How was that possible? Dae-hyun thought about the question carefully before answering. He said that of course he felt fear. Anyone who claimed to have no fear was lying. But fear was just an emotion. It did not have to control actions. Skydancer helped with that. When he climbed into the cockpit, he felt safe. The machine was his partner, his friend. Together they could handle anything. The bright colors and friendly appearance reminded him not to let fear win. Krethax nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. The Varathians designed weapons to inspire fear in enemies, but humans had designed their relationship with weapons to remove fear from themselves. Both approaches had the same goal. Both wanted warriors who could fight effectively. They just took different paths to reach that goal. The general asked to meet with Jiwon next. She was in her workshop, already working on improvements to the Sentinel X9 design. She had ideas for better shields, faster response times, more efficient weapons. She looked up when Krethax entered, greeted him politely, and went right back to her work. The general watched her for a moment, impressed by her focus. He asked her why she continued to modify the machines. They had proven themselves in battle. They were effective as they were. What more did she want to achieve? Jiwon looked at him like the answer was obvious. She said that good was never good enough. There was always room for improvement, always something that could work better. Stopping innovation just because something worked was the fastest way to fall behind. More than that, Jiwon explained, she loved working on the Sentinel X9 units. Each machine was like a puzzle that she got to solve. Each pilot had different needs and preferences. Customizing machines for specific people made them perform better. The bright colors and decorations were not just for fun. They helped pilots identify their specific machine instantly. They created emotional bonds that improved performance. Krethax spent the rest of the day touring Earth's facilities. He saw factories where new Sentinel X9 units were being built. He saw repair bays where damaged machines were being fixed. He saw training centers where new pilots learned their craft. Everywhere he went, he saw the same thing. People who genuinely cared about what they were doing. People who took pride in their work. People who had turned war machines into something they could love. That evening, Krethax asked for a private meeting with Hyunwoo. They met in a quiet room overlooking the city. The general stood at the window for a long time, watching the lights of the Sentinel X9 units scattered across the landscape. Finally, he spoke. He said that when he first gave humanity the Sentinel X9, he thought he understood what he was doing. He was giving weapons to a weak race to help them survive. He expected gratitude and proper respect for Varathian military tradition. Instead, humans had done something he never anticipated. They had taken the gift and made it their own. They had changed it in ways that seemed foolish but turned out to be brilliant. They had found effectiveness in friendliness. They had discovered strength in joy. They had proven that there was more than one way to be warriors. Hyunwoo thanked the general for his understanding. He said that humans never meant to disrespect Varathian culture. They simply could not be something they were not. Humanity had its own way of doing things. That way might seem strange to others, but it worked for them. The victory over the Kryn proved that. Krethax turned from the window. He said that he had been wrong about humans. They were not children playing with adult tools. They were something else entirely. They were a race that could take the most serious things and approach them with lightness. They could face death and find reasons to smile. That was not weakness. That was a kind of strength that the Varathians had never developed. The general made a decision. The alliance between Earth and the Varathian Empire would continue, but as equals rather than protector and protected. Humanity had earned the right to chart their own course. They had proven they could defend themselves. More than that, they had shown that they had valuable lessons to teach. The galaxy had been at war for so long that everyone had forgotten there were other ways to be strong. Before he left, Krethax made one request. He wanted to see Dae-hyun's Sky Dancer one more time. They went to the hangar where the bright blue machine stood. The general walked around it slowly, looking at every detail. The friendly painted eyes, The decorative patterns, the small dents and scratches from combat. He reached out and touched the leg of the machine, something he had never done with any weapon before. Dae-hyun was there too. He asked the general what he thought. Krithax was quiet for a moment. Then he said that Skydancer was beautiful, not in the way weapons were usually beautiful, with clean lines and menacing designs, but beautiful in the way it represented something new, a different philosophy, a different future. The general said he finally understood why humans called these machines cute. It was not about appearance. It was about love. The Varathian ship left Earth's orbit the next morning. But this time Krithax departed with respect instead of doubt. He had seen something that would change his understanding of warfare forever. Humans had taken the Varathian Empire's most sophisticated weapon and made it better, not through technology but through heart. They had proven that the strongest weapons were not the ones that inspired the most fear, but the ones wielded by warriors who felt no fear at all. As news of the general's visit spread, other civilizations began to look at humanity differently. Some were curious, some were cautious, but all of them recognized that something significant had happened. A new race had entered the galactic stage, and they played by rules no one had seen before. The colorful Sentinel X9 units standing guard over Earth were not just weapons. They were symbols of a different way of thinking, a way that valued joy over fear, creativity over tradition, and friendship over intimidation. Hyun-woo stood in the command center, watching reports come in from across human space. More Sentinel X9 units were being built every day. More pilots were being trained. Earth was ready for whatever challenges came next. But more importantly, humanity had stayed true to itself. They had not become copies of other races. They had found their own path through the galaxy, one bright color at a time. Dae-hyun climbed into Skydancer's cockpit for another routine patrol. The machine hummed to life, responding to his presence like always. He looked at the friendly painted eyes on the control panel and smiled. The Varathians had given humanity their most sophisticated weapon. Humans had called it cute, and in doing so, they had made it something even more powerful than its creators had ever imagined.